bringing it up. It's a very, very key thing. The city is retaining utility easement.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you please repeat it?
The city's retaining utility easement. Water, electric, fiber optic. And so that still provides an ability for that kind of development to bring it down into the community. Now, it's not exclusive. A potential partner could instead decide to contract with Mike Williams. That was also, there was a lot of intense negotiation about that point, but it gives the ability to the city to provide an option for a potential developer to work with the city and utilize that easement to bring those kind of utilities into the community for the betterment of the community, hopefully for some direct revenue potentially on the deal, but again, an option for a developer to develop that easement and get certain natural gas or whatever other kind of utilities that may be desired into the community. And so the city, and that's a great point in the deeds, those rights are retained by the city. Thanks for mentioning that.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'd like to, in the year and a half I've been involved in these negotiations and the hard work Chris and his company put together, it just needs to be duly noted that line has not had no action on it for 21 years. It's just sitting out there causing a whole bunch of legal problems, 21 years. And when we got into discussions with Mr. Williams, he openly admitted or stated that to get that line up and running to where you can run a train up there at a speed that you make some money, $40 to $60 million to upgrade that line. And the city and the foundation, no way had that kind of money. But the key thing, like Ed brought out, is at the end of the line sits Eagles. So if anything positive happens, it's going to end up right here in our backyard, no matter what it is. Who knows? Tesla wants to bring the factory in. They'll use the train to bring it in. Somebody will have to pay for the line. That's just some points I wanted to bring out. Thank you.
I have a question on that. Milepost 17 exactly terminates where?
Just north of Shafter, about a mile and a half north of Shafter in Elko County. That demarcation point is relevant because everything north of that is not secured by the deed of trust. Everything south of that from milepost 117 to 127.0 is secured by the deed of trust. So that's why that's relevant.
Okay, and the termination of that part of the Cobra to McGill terminates where?
So we're selling everything from Cobra, that's milepost 0 in Elko County, all the way down to milepost 127.0, which is about a mile north of McGill Junction. It sits out here in the valley. We're only securing from milepost 17, just north of Shafter, which is about 17 miles down from the start of the line, all the way down to milepost 127.0. And so we're selling everything, but only securing a subset of that. And we're not securing the first 17 miles with the deed of trust.
I'm well aware of that. Now,
Okay.
that part of the railroad also goes below the McGill Sands and then up and comes in as a freight line up by the old line quarry. I'm trying to determine exactly where the end of that Cobra line is going to be.
The end of the new S&S line is at milepost 127.0.
It's exactly where?
Milepost 127.00, about a mile north of McGill Junction. So everything you're talking about, and actually, it might be helpful, Councilman Plains, to take a look at. We're finding these STB exhibits, and I can bring this over to you, Councilman. But we have these STB exhibits here. You want me to give you one of these when we talk about it? So these are, the last 3 exhibits all have maps that are needed by the Surface Transportation Board, federal agency, that will need to approve this deal. And so when you take a look at it, you have Cobra here, above I-80. You have milepost 127.0 here. Everything below that, including the McGill branch, the Highline branch, is is called the historical line. And we're making a very definitive demarcation point there. And what we did, was we worked with a gentleman by the name of Bob Morley in Elko, and me and some other people, as far as going through the documents that gave the city and the foundation the property. And we made very, very sure that we didn't, on these deeds, if this deal is approved, when we sell it, we're only giving property north of this milepost 127 to SNS. And even if somehow the folks that worked on that, this diligence on the deeds got it wrong, we have drafted, me and my colleagues, within this document, sort of a savings clause that all the parties are obligated to go and correct that issue if somehow something on the historical line slipped into the deed that's going to them. I don't want to rely on that at all, and that's why we were very, very diligent in going through meticulously the deeds and making sure that everything was below milepost 127.0. But so that's where it's going to be. It's just north of McGill there. You can see on the map. Well, it's to the west of McGill and south of McGill, in the middle of the valley.
Ernie, the easy way to picture that is that the first crossing is at Club 50. The second crossing that was covered up will be a mile north of that, where we used to go down and come into McGill. So it completes that Y. So it's actually probably a mile, 2 miles north of Club 50.
It's north of Club 50, no doubt.
And the old crossing, the second crossing is going into McGill. And we're above that, we came.
It's west of Highway 93. That's where the dividing line's going to be.
I just wanted to make sure clarification of that, and I want to thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
Okay, did we have any further questions regarding this item? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item 4. Councilman Oliver, discussion for possible action, approval of, and direction to Mayor Pro Tem Michelle Beecher to execute on behalf of the city the settlement, sale, and mutual release of all claims agreement by and between Nevada Northern Railway Foundation Incorporated, a Nevada nonprofit corporation formerly known as White Pine Historical Railroad Foundation Incorporated, and Nevada nonprofit corporation, the City of Ely, Nevada, a Nevada Municipal Corporation, and S&S Short Lane Leasing LLC, a Utah Limited Liability Company, and any exhibits thereto, and to take all actions necessary or appropriate to consummate the closing of the transaction contemplated in that agreement. Sorry, I thought that was the one. Okay, Chris, did you have comments on that?
Yeah, just, so again, it's a sign, and then there's an escrow period and a close. There's certain things that need to happen in that escrow period. Mayor Pro Tem Beecher, on behalf of the city, under this agenda item, would sign the deeds. Mr. Bassett, on behalf of the foundation, will also sign the deeds. S&S, they'll be signing their documents, the deed of trust, the promissory note, the guarantee. And we'll get to what the STB lawyers are going to do on the next agenda item. We also would need to sign escrow instructions with the escrow company, and then we would need to put all those documents in the escrow and then wait for the closing to happen. Maybe we would need to talk to certain other officials regarding recordings or something like that. And so this agenda item gives Mayor Pro Tem Beecher the authority to sign these documents, to sign the actual agreement itself, first of all, that'd be the first thing we sign, and to sign the other agreements that are incorporated into this transaction, and then takes actions to affect the transaction contemplated in this agreement.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, do we have any discussion on this item?
Just clarification, so that was Councilman Steer.
Pardon me?
That was you.
Yeah.
You move.
Move to approve this one.
Okay, so hearing no discussion, we will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item 5, Councilman Allworth, discussion for possible action. Approval of and direction to attorneys for the city at the law firms of Mockham, Cox and LaGoy and Thompson Hine to execute and/or file all necessary exhibits to the settlement, sale, and mutual release of all claims agreement by and between Nevada Northern Railway Foundation Incorporated and Nevada Nonprofit Corporation, formerly known as White Pine Historical Railroad Foundation Incorporated, a Nevada Nonprofit Corporation, the City of Ely, Nevada, a Nevada Municipal Corporation, and S&S Short Line Leasing LLC, a Utah Limited Liability Company in the 7th Judicial District Court of the State of Nevada and the Surface Transportation Board, and to take all actions necessary or appropriate to consummate the closing of the transactions contemplated in the agreement.
Chris Danko again. So along similar lines as the authority provided to Mayor Pro Tem Beecher in the prior agenda item here, our law firm is Moffitt, Cox & LaGoy, and your STB counsel is Thompson Hine, who I had mentioned earlier. Mr. Moreno with Thompson Hine will be filing electronically one of the STB exhibits tomorrow. A gentleman by the name of Charles Montaigne, who is S&S's STB attorney, now that this deal has been approved, would be electronically filing 2 of the STB exhibits to this agreement tomorrow as well. So that's what would be happening on the STB front. On our front, we would still need to work with the escrow agent, and we need to help get the documents recorded. And myself and Mr. Jeff Silvestri, on behalf of S&S, he's with the law firm of McDonald Toronto in Las Vegas. He has already signed, and I will sign and deliver to the court tomorrow the Exhibit A, which is the stipulation for dismissal, asking for findings of fact and conclusions of law from the court. That is a condition to the closing, that the court grant that order and that stipulation and sign off on it. And so we would be doing other things in order, logistically, a lot of, to take this deal from where it would be now, once Ms. Beecher signs, to close. And you would give us authority to do that. Thank you.
Do we have any questions regarding that item? Hearing none, I call for a motion.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, and then I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item 6, Councilman Allworth, discussion for possible action. Approval of Resolution 2020-11, approving a 2021 Nevada legislative platform regarding transfer of State of Nevada buildings at the Nevada Northern Railway National Historic Landmark back to the City of Ely and Nevada Northern Railway Foundation Incorporated. Do you have any?
I have a
Okay.
comment on this resolution. Thank you to the public that came and voiced their opinion on that. The only comment I have is, and it's, again, maybe Mark could help me on this here, is on the second to last, or the now therefore, the wording is freight depot buildings to the City of Ely, Nevada Northern Railway Foundation from the State of Nevada to promote more local control. But the word control, I don't know, I'd rather see a word like oversight. Control is, to me, is like, well, it's got you now. And so, I don't know if that word, maybe a definition of that word in there, control, maybe that could help me with this. Other than that, I think it's fine.
Well, I guess the parallel would be is that if the buildings are transferred back, then the foundation would be operating the buildings as we do the rest of the railroad. So I'm not sure, we basically control access to the engine house, the machine shop. If you come onto the property, you have to purchase admission. So it would be the same with those 2 buildings too.
Control any expenses, any modifications, or...
Exactly.
Okay, all right, I'll take back that thought then, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
At this time, I think this is a little bit advanced before us. I would like to make a recommendation to table this item as long as we give us an opportunity to make some permanent discussion of it. I find a little bit of fault in the idea right now, and I'd like the council, prior to negotiating with the foundation over something like this, to clarify a few points I have in my mind that I just don't feel comfortable with.
Do you have questions you'd like to ask the senator?
No, I would like to have a council meeting that would give us, put it on the agenda so people that would have an opportunity to make some recommendations and whatnot. I've had people call me about it, and I tend to agree with them. And so therefore, I'd like to bring those out in a special meeting, or not a special meeting, but in a meeting as an agenda item for discussion of the operation or the reason for taking that. It's a request to have the facilities returned back.
Is there a deadline? We only have one more meeting at the end of the year. The legislation starts month in 21.
Yeah,
January,
February.
Okay, so is there a timeline that this has to be approved to get to the legislative platform?
I think you probably have some BDR deadlines, don't you? On that, so first BDR can be done by anywhere, Pete or whatever, and the next committee, so we are up against a deadline, I think, to get something like that done over there. I can't remember all the criteria. You know, I don't know what I'm personally in favor of this 100%. You know, I think that the fact that the railroad, since the inception, and I was on the council back then, we've had the management board, and then we had now the railroad running that. And I don't know, I think they're doing a good job of what they've done. I think there's some issues I've always had, but, I mean, we all would have issues with whoever or whatever. But I think that this is a great idea to get this returned to us. It'd be a good positive move for the entire area down there. And so, I don't know what Ernie would like to see. I mean, we should discuss that tonight if you'd like, but I don't know what.
I would tend to agree with you on that, and just, I mean, I am very appreciative for the state and what they've done down there to date, and the care that they've taken over the years. I love that freight barn. I got married there 4 years ago, and I appreciate the comments that were made today, but I also feel that it is, it's frankly a waste of resources to have two entities running two different situations down there when we could combine and maximize the impact to our community and what we could do to that for those buildings and to those buildings. I mean, I think it's been wonderful what the state's done while they've been there, and perhaps it is time that they are now combined.
I agree with what you say, Councilman Beecher. I think, you know, the current condition and economics of the state and what the governor's going to come out with, who knows? But it would be really terrible if he does not transfer, that it doesn't get transferred, and it just goes to shambles.
Well, I'm not recommending against this. No, I'm in favor of it. But it is on the agenda immediately without any preparation from any of us to have any discussion. Fine, I'm in favor of it. Don't get me wrong.
I think this is just that the council wants to send it up the ladder to Carson City, you know, to the legislators and the lobbyists and so forth.
We react quickly without really looking at all possibilities of the item. And this is not one of those type of items. I'm in agreement we should do the best we can as quickly as we could. But there's going to be some problems in negotiating its operation, okay? That's all. That's my,
You won't have the
that's my
city.
statement, and I'm not going to explain it.
Okay, I'm just saying the city's not going to negotiate with the legislators. That's what you have lobbyists and so forth for.
Sure.
In answer to Ed's comment earlier, there is a BDR already on this in the legislative process.
It would almost have to be.
Yeah, it's already started. Thank you.
Okay, so, do we have any further discussion? And do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to, go with this agenda item.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second, I will call for the vote, all in favor,
Aye.
and any opposed? Okay, motion carries, and I will pass it back to you.
Good job.
We'll move on with item 7, then Mayor Robertson, discussion for possible action, approval of mayor's reappointment of John Sarchalis to the Regional Planning Commission, term ending December 31st, 2021. As the council may recall, when we set up the RPC, we had to stagger everybody's terms, and John was the first one up, and he expressed an interest in being reappointed, and I feel he's done a good job, so I would like to reappoint him. I will entertain a motion to confirm that appointment or leave it.
I will so move.
Do I have a second?
One second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 8, Mayor Robertson, discussion for possible action, approval of proclamation declaring November 28, 2020, Small Business Saturday in the city of Ely. I will entertain a motion on this item.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, everybody play nice. We have a motion and a second. Arm wrestle? Who wants arm wrestle? Any further discussion?
So, not so much discussion, but I would just like to, anyone who is within the sound of my voice or on the phone, express the dire need to shop small this holiday season, because our small businesses have been hit hard, and so anything that we can do to support them on Small Business Saturday or otherwise, please go out and do that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very unanimous. Item 9, Mayor Robertson, City Attorney Manueli, discussion only, review of staff suggestions on changes to the business license code. As I mentioned to some council members, we've just been dealing with some, they've been ongoing issues with how we use the current code and how the code doesn't make, gosh, what am I trying to say here? It doesn't anticipate some of the new forms of businesses that we do, like pop-up businesses or temporary businesses or things like that. It is also really complicated for staff to explain to people. It really hasn't been updated in a long time. So staff put together a few recommendations by looking at different cities, how they do it around our state. Our attorney, Shane Manueli, put together this draft for everybody to kind of look at, incorporating those suggestions, and then for the council to look at that and give their own suggestions, so we can start working on this, so that we have something in place by next meeting, is the hope. So,
I have a question. We have our business license renewed now, beginning July 1. Is that an annual payment?
yes.
Then why do we have a quarterly payment question in here? On B, on page 3, it says that all council who take license fail to timely pay the quarterly fee, or an annual quarterly fee should be stricken from that, right?
Well, I'll let Shane describe what he's done here in his draft, so that,
Where are you looking?
I'm looking at the very last paragraph on the third page, B, 31-10, under B, second line. An annual payment, and what would the quarterly fee be?
Oh, you're right. Well, that's incorrect. We took that.
What do we do?
And so as I drafted this, I tried to be as broad as possible and include a number of different things so that we could chip away at it as we went. I didn't want to have anything not in front of the council, so we could take things out as we look at it. And so what you'll look at is the exemptions. I was more broad in the exemptions as we went through, and that was a typo on my part, and so we'll take the 15 days out. It is an annual payment, and it's one that is not prorated, and if the business is, there's nothing, there's always that annual fee is what this.
I have one more on C of the same 31-10. The license and carry which sheet considered to be covered. I think that you talked I think that should be gendered, it should be whatever. Like, the license category makes she,
Oh, yes.
considered to be proper, and I don't, that should be, it could be he or she.
So we go gender neutral, and then the thought of going to the treasurer, we discussed that, and the desire is gonna be to keep it with the city clerk, or to move it to the city clerk to have supervision, because our city clerk is already doing, much of the overseeing of business licenses and, dealing with any issues there. And so we'll make that, be sure to make it politically correct and neutral, and, put it in the city clerk.
When I was going through this earlier, I got interrupted, so I apologize if it's in here and I overlooked it. We had an issue, after the fire at Margarita's, the fire department was going to all of the businesses in town, doing a health and safety inspection. And there was a business who was refusing to allow them access to their business. Is
Yes,
that
that's-
addressed here?
That is contemplated here in 3-1-13, investigations and inspections,
Okay.
allowing city officials and their respective deputies to make those investigations. This code also, we don't have good language on revocation or suspensions, and this new ordinance on the next section goes into suspension and revocations if that needs to be applied.
Perfect, thank you.
It also, before that, gives the duties of licensees, and so it sets out clearly what the duty of a business is in order to maintain their license.
Great.
I have a comment on the first page. We talk about the license retroactive to January 1st of the year. I think that conflicts with 3.1.6 and where our period is July.
Yep, that's a typo.
Then I have a question on 3-1-9, multiple licenses. More than one business license may be required for a business operation depending upon the type of business activity being conducted. In the past, there was one business owner. He had a hair salon, an archery store, a curtain outfit, and a fence building, covered under one license in one building. And there's a couple other businesses in the city right now that do the same thing. I think that needs to be addressed. I believe they use the terminology of enterprise. But that's,
And that's what that contemplates, is that one business may be required to carry multiple licenses, if they're carrying out multiple businesses.
so that's what I'm trying to see if we can avoid that in the future. If a guy comes in and he wants, well, you already got this, this, and this under that title. Well, I want to put them all under this business. ABC Enterprises, it covers all of these. I've got rentals, I've got a CPA firm, I've got this, and I only want one business license. That covers all of it. I think they have in the past covered underneath that. And then I had this is probably an explanation on the second page, an explanation needed under H, an insurance company holding a current license or certificate of authority pursuant to an Iowa statute. Explain that, and what's that about? Insurance company.
And so that's just a broad list of exceptions that you'll see throughout the state and different cities. So that one is just allowing an exception for insurance companies contemplated under revised statute 680B. And so I don't have the statute in front of me, but we don't need to expand all these exceptions out as far as they go, but those are exceptions that I've seen throughout the state.
So for example, insurance, the presentation we had last meeting, those people came in,
I imagine they'd be contemplated in there because they wouldn't be required to have a Ely business license.
Right.
They're operating likely under the 680B. And we could list out more exclusively what that is. And that's what the point of this discussion is today, is just to see if there's anything more to be researched, any questions to look into, and then we can present it again all before our public hearing.
okay.